Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MonkCast. I am Rachel Stevens, Research Director with RedMonk, and today I'm very excited to introduce you to JT Perry. This is probably a little bit different than what we typically get on MonkCast content. Maybe I'll just let JT introduce himself and what he is working on.
Hey, JT Perry, currently the co-founder of Barn Analytics. My background is actually much more boring than that. Enterprise development and leadership. Kind of grew up in the technology world in insurance companies and claim systems and fun stuff like that. I think I've had just about every technology role possible in those worlds. Somewhere around COVID, decided to return to farming roots. I live on 20 acres here southeast of Seattle, out towards Mount Rainier, if you're familiar with that. Ended up between roles last summer, and like a lot of kind of startup ideas, decided to scratch our own itch. We were having some challenges keeping track of the overall health of our chickens. We would have just really unexpected mortality all of a sudden, like walk in and find one has passed away and not really sure why or how to figure it out. And that started us on this little adventure where we developed ChickenSense, and that's what we're working on rolling out now.
Very exciting. I feel like there's so many jokes on old Twitter and things like that where people in the tech world start to burn out and say, I never want to touch a computer again. I want to go live in the woods or I want to go on a farm. And you kind of did that, but you also decided to still bring the computers with you. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I have to say, and Steve talks about this a lot, be careful what you ask for, right? Farming is definitely more work. It is definitely restrictive. If you've got pigs and chickens and garlic harvest is coming up, your summers change quite a bit, right? The idea of summer vacation, or we're just going to pack up and drive to the city for the day or something, that's not really an option anymore. So be careful what you ask for.
Fair enough. Well, good morning advice for everyone. And also, while we are doing disclaimers, I also want to do my disclaimer, which is that JT and Jenny did a friends and family round raise for Barn Analytics, and I am a nominal investor in that, mostly because it has vastly increased the rate at which JT texts me picture updates of barn animals, which is delightful for me. So just so that's out in the open. But yeah, so let's talk about where you're at with Barn Analytics.
Yeah. So the premises or the hypothesis that we truly believe we are solving is that the one way to know if a chicken is ill or not doing well is weight loss. So they will stop to eat. Because they are so low on the food chain, literally in the animal world, they have this incredible prey response to never show weakness, never show anything's wrong. And that's why it's really hard to see if, frankly, if they are sick. And so that if you really see a chick or a chicken not doing well, you might be as close as 24 hours or 36 hours, and there's not a lot you can do. So really focused on egg-laying chickens and kind of the backyard farmer up to, maybe 100, 200 chickens, they return to nesting boxes. And so this idea that if you put a leg band on a chicken with a RFID tag, right? The same thing you basically use to tap and pay with your credit card or iPhone, that NFC world, and they come back, you can have a scale sitting in that nesting box and capture their weight. From an egg laying perspective, that gives us some other really interesting information too. If they lay an egg, right, you'll detect the egg's weight after they leave. So you can get a feeling for specific egg laying patterns through, especially, right, fall and winter. Unless you start doing some manipulation with temperature and UV lights and some stuff that isn't great for the longevity of the chicken either, they're going to dial back their egg laying. Well, different breeds do that at different rates. What does that really turn out to be? And then lastly, the idea of broody, which is where chickens, we call them broody when they get that natural urge to sit on eggs, right, and incubate them for 20 plus days, and hopefully you have chicks. Well, they don't sit on them 24 hours. They hop off to go eat, right? Get a drink of water. At least you hope. And sometimes chickens aren't very good at this. One of the things we discovered that we can talk about later, but is that one of our young chickens was really, really bad at this. They would go and sit on different eggs every time. So no one pile of eggs would, we've got, 5 nesting boxes. None of those piles of eggs would ever actually incubate. And then, in fact, you couldn't eat them or sell them because they would be partially developed. And it's uncomfortable feelings. We don't need to
Yeah,
get into that.
that doesn't feel great at all.
But, that's where we learned that one of ours was really terrible at this. And maybe she'll figure it out over the years. We'll have to see. Or we've got another one that's really good at it and we'll hatch eggs. So long way, we created the device to be in the nesting box to capture their activity. Most nesting boxes or most chicken coops don't have Wi-Fi connections, or a lot of them don't. You tend to put your chicken coop away from your house. Chickens don't smell like roses. Don't smell terrible if you keep up with them, but it's not something you want outside your bedroom window. And so we really had to make sure we used Bluetooth in the phone, that just if you have your phone in your back pocket and walk in to collect eggs or change the food or water or anything like that, we'll download the information and push it to the back end and start to push alerts. If you lose 5 or 10% of your chicken's weight over a certain period of time, it's time to start figuring out what to do from there.
Very cool. So it sounds like the primary catalyst for you creating this was that you wanted to better track your own chicken's health, and brooding.
Yep.
Are those the two main ones?
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
It was really the health. And then it was like, oh, by the way, we can figure out the brooding too. And that's turned out to be pretty interesting along the way.
Very cool. So is this a common issue for all farms, just small farms, backyard farmers, everybody?
All farms have the issue.
Hmm.
When you get up into the industrial scale, there are different ways to track it. I would also say, when you're up at the industrial scale, this sounds very brutal, but they're disposable. There are some large scale farms that do a very good way of monitoring chicken health and giving them a really good experience. There's others that's as industrial as you think it is, with just little cages where the eggs just fall out on the conveyor belt and that's it too. But the small backyard farm, there isn't any really way out there. You can spend a lot of time with your chicken. I mean, you can spend as much time as you want. Some people spend a lot of time. Some people just go and collect eggs every couple days, and that's about it. You do start to learn them and personalities, and you can start to pick up on some of it, but there's not really a good way to know what's going on from a trending perspective. If you have different breeds of chickens, different colored eggs. Okay, so I know this egg was laid by one of my green egg layers, but what was it? Was it Greta? Was it Betty? I don't know. Stuff like that. So you can start to figure out some more information from there. But yeah, we're targeting the smaller end of the scale.
Okay. Well, let's talk more about then. I want to talk more about the types of analytics and the shape of the data that you're collecting. But maybe let's talk a bit about both the platform and the hardware. So
Sure.
what does the hardware look like?
The hardware looks like this. In a lot of ways, it looks like a bathroom scale.
Okay.
LED lights and all of that. Let me disconnect the antenna. The lid just has an RFID antenna on it.
Okay.
Very exciting. And then the inside is a custom circuit board we designed with the strain gauge for the weight, chips and all of that kind of stuff. And then I just have one battery in it at the moment because we're actually doing a battery rundown test, confirming how long it runs from there. It's relatively simple at the end of the day. Spend a lot of time with the circuit board and trying to be very power conscious, trying to figure out, okay, how often should you turn the Bluetooth radio on so you don't miss the farmer in there collecting the eggs, but at the same time, that's the biggest power draw.
All right. That makes sense.
How do you mimic that? So our goal is to be able to keep it in the coop for at least 2 weeks. That's what we're shooting for. That's what the math on paper looks like. We'll see what happens here in reality and go from there. And then you can charge it overnight. Chickens don't lay eggs generally. There's always an exception to every rule. But at night they roost, right? They sit on their bars and huddle up to stay warm or spread out to stay cool. And so you can pull it out overnight and charge it in a couple hours and put it back in the morning and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Now, so you talked about chickens maybe not smelling like roses. How do you protect all of the hardware from chicken grossness?
Couple ways. One is the design of the box itself, making sure that anything that lands on top, it's made of a 3D printed plastic called ASA. You can wash it, you can wipe it off. I mean, you don't submerge it, but you can wipe it off. But we designed the box to make sure everything flows off. We do have some channels within it, even if moisture gets in there, but chicken coops are pretty dry. Maybe any humidity is just, if you're in Florida versus, some other place, you'll get humidity, but design the components around that. All the switches and LEDs have, gaskets and IP67 and all those fun technical terms. And then really we spent a lot of time on the design of the box landing on ASA to allow for the heat in that perspective. The other thing is a lot, and this is very personal style with chicken farmers, but most have what they call nesting pads. Think of it as a piece of carpet, or sometimes literally hay, sometimes kind of this artificial hay, astroturfy kind of looking stuff, and that'll protect the box.
Okay. So this would go underneath that.
Yeah, this will go underneath it. But even if not, if the chicken's just laying on there, look, as a chicken owner, you're dealing with chicken poop quite a bit. You kind of get used to that, but you can scrape it off like you do a roost bar or anything else. If you want to wipe it off with a wipe or spray cleaner or something like that, you're welcome to, and obviously you do before you bring it in to charge it and things like that. But it stays pretty clean. Done a lot of work to try to keep the top as smooth as possible to keep it clean. So yeah. Temperature is probably going to be our biggest thing. We, again, all in the math, it all looks okay, but we'll get out with some real testers, especially over this summer. More worried about heat than cold, but we'll see. I expect it'll be fine, but again, I think it's one of those that looks good on paper. We'll see how it performs in practice.
Okay, that makes sense. And where are you doing this manufacturing? Like how is this getting built?
So the boards and circuits, we're using a vendor overseas to put together. The first boards I built myself. But I don't know that anybody would call those quality. I'm okay at soldering. I don't know that I'm great at soldering. So getting the boards assembled overseas, the printing is right there, as well as some other printers we have access to. We've got some ideas about, I'm super involved in robotics. People can see other online talks I've done about that. And some schools that want to earn money and have a bunch of 3D printers. We're looking to see if we can set up a deal with them to both make sure they make some money for that. But it is a challenge. Given everything that's going on in the supply chain world right now, the cost of plastic has gone up. But yeah, we should be able to keep up with manufacturing. If it takes off like our dreams, well, we'll go to a third party printer. But at that point, the additional cost of that, of course, doesn't matter if you're selling that many of them.
That falls into the good problems to have
Right.
situation.
Exactly.
Love it. So that's kind of the hardware. What about the platform and the app and all of those things?
Yeah, it's a React app across Android and iOS. I don't think we're doing anything groundbreaking, pretty standard from that perspective. Spending most of our time working on, frankly, the Bluetooth communications, right? How do we pair to these devices if you have 3 or 4 of them in your coop because you got 3 or 4 nesting boxes? How do we make sure we get the information in the time that somebody's in there? So, a lot of like compression using protobufs, things like that to shrink the size of the bits and bytes coming across. And then shipping it to the back end, we're hosting on Cloudflare because we're not doing a ton of magic here. Uploading the data. Right now, we're focused on a lot of basic trends, like, what's the weight been over the last year, month, week, that kind of stuff, how across the breeds, if you've put in, it's up to you how much data you put in about each chicken. But if you capture it, then we'll try to grab trending along that information. As the data set grows, that opens up some other opportunities for us to really dive in and kind of put on more of a data science hat. There's not a lot of data out there. Lucky to have a local university vet professor advising a little bit in an informal way, but advising in the background. And there isn't a ton of this kind of information. So it's not anything that we can say, all right, let's put it in a vector database and create a model and all of those kind of stuff yet. We'll wait until we have a data set to allow us to start doing that and ask even more questions. Excuse the pun, but it's really been a chicken and egg problem on the data analytics side. I know,
Uh,
but it really has been. So we're hoping to collect a bunch more data from that perspective.
Very cool. So how are you doing the like weight loss alerts now before you have all that data? It's just kind of your
Just
bird sloth.
pushing notifications to the app, like a lot of applications on the mobile phone. Hey, we noticed Greta is down 5% this week. Start to pay attention. 10%, you really need to. 10% seems to be the big flag based on all of our research and talking to people and stuff like that. And then there's some stuff you can do, right? Start putting supplements in water. You can go down the treatment route if you can figure out something more specific, right? Things happen egg bound, which is literally the egg gets stuck in the duct on the way out. So you can start to look for that. Yeah. And there's things you can do for that. They get these little sores on their feet sometimes. If you, especially that's something we battle up here where it's really wet, and that will just kind of keep them from wanting to, frankly, walk on over and get food and stuff like that. So it's just more of a, hey, go pay attention, go start to figure out what's happening. And then if you get a rash of your chickens all of a sudden starting to do that, then that's where you really got to start diving in and figuring out if you've got some kind of flock-wide infection, which gets pretty scary in the days of bird flu.
Oh,
Knock on
yeah.
wood, that seems to be dialing back. That's the worst nightmare because, I mean, unfortunately, at that point, you have to cull the whole flock to stop it. It's a very much protect your neighbor kind of situation at that point.
Mhm.
But there are some other infections across the flock too that you want to stop or make sure there's nothing in your water or things like that.
Okay. So there are steps you can take, but you have to know to take them.
Mhm. Yeah, you gotta know to look,
Yeah.
right? And, depending on how much time you're with your chickens, and like I said, they have this incredible prey response to show they're tough, I'm fine, right? To,
Mhm.
make sure they aren't the ones that get picked off from predators.
I think from what you've said, you have had a number of challenges putting this product together. It sounds like Bluetooth has been one of them. It sounds like heat has been one of them. It sounds like just general, all the manufacturing
Very
supplies and putting together a product. What would you say is the biggest engineering challenge?
The biggest engineering challenge has been that it's the first time for any of us involved actually designing circuit boards, right? And we've
Okay.
had amazing friends and people who know a whole lot more knowledge, right? A big shout out to Chris Petrelli, for example, has
Mhm.
been just an endless resource for, hey, I've got this, and I think I'm going to solve it this way, and for him to go, or you could just do this that people have done for 10 years, things like that, right? I did some of this in the Navy, especially kind of troubleshooting and understanding how it was created and stuff like that, but from the ground up. And then just frankly, geopolitics, the tariffs every day, even the unknown. You order, it gets into customs, you get a bill from UPS or FedEx or whoever that says, "Oh, you need to pay $75, or we're not going to release this," and it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
So just some frankly business trying to figure out what the costs are going to be versus the revenue. They're really all over the map, and now with you need petroleum to make plastic, and so watching some of those costs starting to ramp up as well.
Interesting. No, that makes perfect sense. Maybe let's dive into the business side a little bit. Who are
Well,
you trying to reach here?
really trying to reach the folks that have 10, 15 chickens in their backyard. Right.
Okay.
Research and all that shows the TAM, total addressable market, is something in the 3.1 million people have chickens, both domestically, and then it's even more when you get into Europe and other places as well. But we're going to start in the US. Uh, is our first market. A lot of that is just frankly logistics, especially with testing,
Mhm.
right? Got to swap out parts and things like that. We don't have the same shipping challenges. And to hop back to the geopolitical, more predictable as far as shipping rates and tariffs and all of that kind of stuff. Uh,
Okay. And is it fair to say, do people with 10 to 15 chickens, do they tend to think of them more as pets? It's like, so if we do the
yeah,
cattle pets from technology, like where do we
yeah.
fall on that
Or
scale?
stereotyping is dangerous, right? But the archetype is somebody who thinks of them as pets. We think of them as pets. We're on our, heading up. Let's see. After we have chicks right now that are growing up. When they grow up, we'll be up in the 2025 number of chickens laying eggs by the fall. Uh, Looking to go up to 50. So we're probably more in the revenue, right? Our rule on the farm is everybody has to contribute somehow, right? Even the dog's a coyote dog to keep them chased away. But we still think of them as pets, right? We know their names, Greta and Betty and Ted the rooster and all of that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, a lot of the smaller owners will think of them as pets, and that's good from a business perspective, right? Those are the people that are going to want to even know more. The bigger numbers you get, the more you look at them as almost like machines, and maybe they become, I hate the term, but disposable, things like that. Even those chicken owners really care for the chickens and want them to have a good quality of life, but may have different views on tracking.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So tell me about just the general roadmap from here. It sounds like you're still kind of in testing, is prototyping phase or no?
No, we're past prototype. The goal is that for this to be the production model, the production board, everything about it should be the one. We talked about problems earlier. The one other problem is you've got a RFID antenna sitting horizontal. The tag set vertical. That's like the worst possible combination to get a reading. So the one other thing we may end up doing is having to design our own tag to angle the RFID out a little bit, just how radio waves work and stuff like that. But hoping not, and so far it's looking okay. But assuming that all goes, we should be in production in July. We are starting our second product now in design as well, trying to do this in parallel. Another itch to scratch is if you want to sell meat outside your local area, and this varies on the state a little bit, but generally you have to pursue USDA certification, which just is hey, you're keeping everything's clean. You're keeping track of the meat, you know what animal it came from, right? So a batch. So God forbid somebody does get sick, you can pull the whole batch right back. Think recalls, think all of that kind of stuff. But one of the bigger things you have to do is track temperatures of your freezers or fridge for your eggs if you've washed them and fridged them and stuff like that. And there isn't really something simple out there to do that, right? There's all sorts of devices that'll plug into security systems or home assistants or this technology or that technology. But stereotyping again, farmers just want something that they can plug in and just work, so that when the USDA inspector comes out, they can just hit print or show them the mobile app or show them the screen and have some kind of certified that, yes, I promise this was the temperature at this date and, it hasn't been altered kind of security. So we're going to put that together. Simple sensors that capture both the air temperature and then what we call a protein substitute, because you're not going to keep a thermometer in one of your pieces of meat because you want to sell that piece of meat. You use glycol or something like that as a substitute to keep track of it. And go from there. So that's product 2 that we're starting to build in the background while testing for these things goes. Testing for this device isn't just run a unit test. We do all that stuff too, but it has to sit out there for a couple of weeks, and you've got to see through cycles, and so it provides some time to focus on other things.
And we've been saying we're for this whole podcast, but like, who is your team?
Who's my team? Co-founder is the most awesome Jennifer Kenyon, also chief of staff at Get Vocal AI. She's based out of the Windsor, UK, and would not be anywhere near this point without her. So I'm incredibly grateful. And then Jeremy Meese is public now, I can say, has really done the app development and the web development, and also just been that awesome engineering mind to bounce stuff back and forth off of. So yeah, we've had a lot of fun, all kind of doing this in on the side, so to speak.
One. Well, I love it so much. Okay, so let's close with a lightning round.
Okay.
I want to hear all your chickens' names.
Oh, I don't know that I can rattle them all off. I need my daughter. Ted the rooster is the rock star of the place, keeping his hens in line, so to speak. It's a very misogynistic world, the chickens, I have to say, for how that kind of works. Let's see. Nougat was kind of the original and the original mom as well. Let's see. We got Greta, Betty. My kid Jane is going to make so much fun of me because I can't remember the rest of their names. But that's what I've got off the top of my head.
Okay, we'll take it. What is something that your chickens have done that would horrify me or someone who's never kept chickens?
I'm going to go back to the poop. Like you've got to be good with poop.
Okay.
It's kind of the same thing as having your own infant. You deal with it a whole lot more than you want to. They will eat their own eggs, which can...
That is slightly horrifying, yeah.
Yeah. So there are times where you'll go in and find an egg cracked open and all over everything. They'll eat anything, whether you want them to or not is probably, and then they'll peck at each other too. So you'll go out and suddenly see a bunch of feathers missing out of one. So they're not very friendly to each other. They're generally pretty friendly to people other than the rooster. Right. Ted's a jerk most of the time, and that's his job. That's what he's supposed to be. But he can be a real pain in the butt.
Fair enough. All right. Last but not least, what is the best way to eat eggs?
I am a fried person. Over easy is my particular shtick. I am not a cheese and eggs fan, so I don't go down the omelet perspective. I have some weird block in my brain about that.
Okay.
So I am absolutely a fried egg person with your own bacon on the side, I have to say. Bringing the pigs in makes all the difference in the world.
It sounds like you've got all the ingredients for that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, JT, thank you so much for carving out time to come and talk with me. This has been so much fun to hear about all your adventures in both farming and in creating farm products for people.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a blast. One plug, barnanalytics.com. We
Yeah.
are taking pre-orders, or if you don't have chickens, we sell really cool t-shirts too. I'll just say,
Wonderful. Yes, everyone, barneyanalytics.com. All right. Thank you so much, JT.
thanks.